contrarian, leave it to contrarian badass Reggie Middleton. He called the housing crash. He called the collapse of Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers and the crisis in the Eurozone banking system. Reggie Middleton.
Veritaseum is veritas, like the Latin truth, E-U-M. And it was named, I have a very convoluted thought process, but it makes sense, you know, as the longer you know me. And basically, it's truth in markets. The basis, the 5-second elevator trip is, pitch is reforming peer-to-peer capital markets. So we are going from the conventional hub and spoke, central bank, money center banks and power around it, exchanges, etc., to the ability of Peter to do business directly with Paul and Paul to do business directly with Paulette without third parties, intermediaries, rent seekers, gatekeepers, agencies, etc.
Well, it sounds like you're in the right place. So tell us about the current sort of structure that you just mentioned, the hub and spoke thing, and why what you're proposing changes that and advantages of doing that.
Okay, well, let's go all the way back to early money, before you actually had printed currency, where you had barter. If you owned a farm and you lived next to somebody who owned a fishery, you were able to eat a lot of the vegetables and all the meat you wanted. But if you wanted fish, you know, you had a problem because fish don't do well in the dirt, in the soil. Same thing with the fishery guy in the hatchery. Lots of fish, but you know, he's light on vegetables outside of maybe seaweed. So you can actually go and trade your fish for, he could trade his fish for your vegetables, fruits, etc. But you can only carry but so much. And then, you know, mankind, society came up with a way of encapsulating the value of that barter trade. So instead of you carrying a cow on your back, you can carry a cowrie shell or a piece of metal, and the hatchery could do the same.
So I understand what you're saying in terms of barter, but you just mentioned like money center.
I understand. So we'll go the long way. I'll try and speed it up. Okay. So from barter, we went to actually currency, but the currency was not standardized. So that had inefficiencies. Then from that point, we went to standardized currencies, such as paper currencies. They had the pluses and minuses. The pluses were you did not have to carry cows on your back. You didn't have to carry bales of fish. The minuses were, even though they were standardized, they weren't controlled. So you had rampant inflation, deflation, counterfeiting, etc. This culminated during the Great Depression, 1930, which wasn't that long ago in the scheme of things, because we went back over 2,000 years. In the Great Depression, where you had basically a run on banks because banks had profligate spending and habits, a couple of very rich individuals who were private citizens basically cut large checks to save the U.S. banking system. J.P. Morgan, Mr. Vanderbilt, etc. Okay. In exchange for that, they had like a Faustian compact where they gained control of the banking system in exchange for bailing out the U.S. That control is the Federal Reserve, the central bank. Many people are confused because they feel the Federal Reserve is somehow federal. It is not. It's a private corporation with private shareholders. Those private shareholders are the money center banks. So that is that central hub, the Federal Reserve. The money center banks are the concentric circles going around. And outside of there, you have national banks, etc. They control money. They are needed because the way of bartering and then inefficient currencies and then currencies that weren't controlled were basically, I guess, blights on the money system. Okay. Now, with the aspect of the auspice of blockchain technology and smart contracts and consensus decision making and the immutability, so-called, of the blockchain, we can give much of the attributes, if not all the attributes, of the hub and spoke central bank system without any of the risks. So now we can have Peter do directly with Paul without having to carry an oxen on his back, and with the same controls of the central bank hub and spoke system. Now, the hub and spoke system basically survives by taking a small piece of every transaction. Okay, sometimes not so small. Over time, that adds up. It adds up so much that the largest industry in almost every developed economy is finance.
So
going
here's
peer-to-peer.
my question here is the problem that you're trying to solve, is it about the money supply, or is it about lending, or is it about transmitting payments? What is more specific?
Okay, I'm getting to that. That's the next step. So now, in going peer-to-peer and bypassing the centralized system, you bypass what the centralized system has been doing for the last several hundred, 2,000 years, taking that piece of value, acting as the gatekeeper or the rent seeker, which is an economic term, basically taking value that's not actually earned deserved, simply because you're sitting in the middle of two pieces of valuable property. By eliminating that, you free up literally hundreds of billions of dollars of value annually, because that's the economic value that's being extracted from all transactions, practically every transaction. If you're not taking money in your hand, physical dollars, and giving it to somebody else, chances are you're paying a gatekeeper fee to a third party. So our system allows you to do that transaction directly without a gatekeeper. That transaction could take the form of, let's say, brokerage. Our first prototype is a brokerage exchange value trading system where you could buy exposure of about 35,000 tickers, IBM stock, bonds, commodities, gold, silver, indices. You do it without an exchange, without a broker, without a bank, without any counterparty risk. You're not exposed to anybody's balance sheet, without any credit risk. And you can clear almost instantaneously because the clearing is part of the contract. The contract is part of the actual capital. So it's a very different and unique way of doing things. And that was the initial prototype. That's an example of using technology to change the way the capital markets have been working for the last 2,000 some odd years. So, back to the original peer-to-peer.
The thing you just said about how it works, could you go into some more detail about that? Like that, it seemed like it was a big thing that you said in a hurry.
Okay. So that works. I came up with this idea shortly after, actually, before I got to the end of the Bitcoin wiki. I was reading about Bitcoin. I discovered it in 2013, quite late to the party. And I got to the part of smart contracts and money that had its own transportation rails, independent of the money center banks. And I was like, wow, it's amazing. So I'm like, obviously I've missed the gravy train because it's 2013. This stuff was published in 2009. So after looking around, I found now that I not missed the gravy train, but there was really no credible examples of the code in operation. So I decided to drop my old advisory business. We did financial advisory, and I'm known for making big calls, macro calls, Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, real estate, etc. And I made another call on the long side, Bitcoin. Maybe a little early in terms of the capital markets application, but very accurate and strong in my opinion. So I got together, got some analysts, and I took what is called an ISDA agreement, the International Swap Dealers Association Agreement, which is a plain vanilla agreement to do a swap. You're going to break a swap down as you pay something to get something in return. So basically every transaction is a swap, whether you're buying something, trading something, etc. I can yield it into a smart contract based upon the Bitcoin blockchain, which operates very differently from a lot of the other newer blockchains. And we wrote a server that allowed you to do a peer-to-peer transaction with this. When I say peer-to-peer, every individual is fully autonomous. Every transaction is fully autonomous. And we define autonomy, having full control of your capital at all times unless you voluntarily give it up. So let's suppose you want to buy $100 worth of Facebook stock normally. You go to a broker, call them, opening up an account. That'll take 2 or 3 days. You'd send or wire him money. Okay. That will cost you maybe another $30 for the wire, $15 for the wire. Take some time, or you send it in. Then you purchase Facebook stock. Okay, which is basically now in this day and age of a derivative. So you pay a commission to buy the Facebook stock, but you won't get the actual stock. You get a digital IOU. All the while, you never had custody, control, or possession of actual US dollars. You never have custody, control, possession of the actual physical stock. This is all electronic derivatives.
So how's what you're proposing different from other kinds of financial market oriented projects that are doing things like token stocks, smart contract transactions?
Okay, so let me get to the way we do it first, then I answer that question, and then we move forward. So that's the conventional way of doing it, okay? And then if you were to sell that basically tokenized version of the Facebook stock, you have to do the same thing the other way around. Wait 3 days to settle, get your money, order it from the brokerage firm, each step along the way, somebody takes a piece of the transaction. Okay, the way we do it is you have your capital. It's Bitcoin now, but we're porting over to Ethereum blockchain. And you send your capital, you create a smart contract with a very, very simple web interface that says, I want to pay X exposure for Y exposure for X, several different variables. A simple form you fill out. Takes you maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You have leverage, etc., just like a regular transaction. Okay, so you want to send $100 of US dollar exposure, pay that to receive $100 of Facebook exposure. Now, you're not buying a stock, you're buying exposure to the stock price movement. Okay, the system matches you with somebody on the other side who wants to do the opposite. They want to sell $100 of Facebook exposure and buy $100 of US dollar exposure. Okay, you find each other, it matches. A simpler way of putting it is trading exposure. So you're trading exposure for whatever you want by paying something and receiving something for it. That, in essence, is every single transaction anybody ever makes. That exposure can be, US dollar for stock, euros for commodity. It could be my privacy for your health care benefits. It could be, your healthcare information for, 5-year cash flow to the deed to this building. It could be anything.
Not everything is a financial product, though. There is a bit of a difference in buying a financial product as opposed to buying bananas.
Well, I never said financial product. I said we're exchanging value. See, and that's the premise of it. By digitizing it, you leave the financial realm and you gain the realm of actual value. So this expands your potential market significantly. Let's say you are a burgeoning superstar, okay, a model, okay, and you want to monetize your privacy, saying, I think a lot of people will be interested in knowing what I do after hours when I go to dinner. Okay, you take your Google file or whatever tracks you, and you can actually trade that. And then you can find out how the market will monetize it, what price they get for it. And you can swap that with something else. Okay, so it is a value transaction. Now, in quantifying value, you do get back to the argument. You said not everything's a financial asset. Well, that's true until you attempt to put a value on it. Once you put a value on it, then you bring it back to the financial realm. But that's more of an esoteric argument. So that is a long-winded way of explaining what our first prototype was. We did the first swap transaction in December 2013. So I think we were relatively early. About a year later, we were the first to apply for patent protection for the concept. So I believe that we were the first to apply for patent pending or get patents pending for the capital markets application of smart contracts. That was early 2014. My CTO was a patent attorney, so he helped me build it up. I have a team of analysts. We went all the way back to 2008 and checked every patent application, about 340 of them. And it looks like we beat all the big banks or the big technology firms. Of course, it's just for defense. I'm a very, very small startup, so I need to be able to defend myself from these big boys. Now, we're fast forwarding and moving this concept to the Ethereum blockchain. A, it's much easier to write smart contract, systems for. Okay, but B, it gives us more flexibility. So what we're doing is we're having a token offering, and unlike many other token offerings, we are selling the token as software and not as an investment. Now, the software token encapsulates our services and offerings. We're very, very strong in research. Like I said, over the last 10 years, we've had about 86 calls, about 55 of them very strong. We call the collapse of every major bank from 2007 to 2009, every major financial institution. We missed AIG, but we got Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, Countrywide, General Growth Properties. We did the whole European EU. We caught, Apple's fall, Google's gain, the fall of BlackBerry, and I could go on and on and on. This is months beforehand. We get very extensive forensic reports, 36, 40, 50 pages. We are now taking that and we are tokenizing this research, but we're making the research interactive, actionable.